Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So this week I'm going to do a bit of landscape painting, watercolor landscape painting, and I'm going to be doing a winter scene. So I thought maybe start off with some inspiration and looking at some post-impressionist and impressionist paintings, specifically a painting by Vincent van Gogh, which you can see on the screen, and then also one by Camille Pissarro. So first of all, this painting by Vincent is, the reason I looked at this one was, okay, it's a winter landscape, but in my mind, the colors that I associate with winter are usually the cooler colors. So lots of blues, purples, violet, maybe white, that type of thing. But when you look at Vincent's winter landscape, yes, he has blues and whites and things in there, but he also has lots of warm colors as well, which is interesting for me. So he has some earthy colors, oranges, yellows, reds, and of course blues, purples and whites and things. So anyway, it's sort of inspiring or interesting to think about the color scheme that I'm going to use in my painting. If you're interested in sort of getting ideas about colors, I think Vincent van Gogh is a good place to start. His use of color is very interesting. So that's the first thing, the color palette, thinking about that. Then the second thing is, so Impressionism in my mind is often associated with a sort of loose approach to painting. So this one by Camille Pissarro, so okay, this is an oil painting and I'm going to be using watercolor, but it's the same sort of idea, that sort of loose approach to painting. This loose approach, some people love it, some people can't stand it. It does give you some advantages, I think, if you adopt a loose approach. So really what you're trying to do with the loose approach is get away from detail-oriented illustrations or paintings. You're trying to leave all of that behind, and instead you're going to focus on capturing the essence of a landscape. In this case, a winter landscape, a snowy winter landscape. You want to get that feeling that it's cold, sky is kind of overcast, it's maybe been snowing or about to snow. That loose approach can help you to capture that essence, because you're not focusing on the details, you're focusing on the overall effect, the overall landscape. Another thing that I like about the loose approach is it kind of invites the viewer to be more of a participant in the whole experience. See, if you do very detailed photorealism, hyperrealism, naturalism, all those different isms, you're basically spoon-feeding the viewer. You're giving them so much detail that they don't need to figure out what's going on. It's there. What they see is what they get. Whereas with a loose approach, where it's sort of a little bit abstract, the viewer has to do a bit of work to interpret what they're looking at. And I like that. I like getting the viewer as a bit of a participant in the whole experience. The loose approach can also be very expressive, and therefore you can bring emotions and feelings into it. One of the criticisms of the loose approach is that it should be representational, and it's not. And the thing is, though, the human experience isn't just about seeing things, trees, fences, houses. There's also, being a human being, to a large part, is experiencing emotions, because that's the way our brains are wired. We're emotional sort of creatures. Maybe we like to think that we're logical, but half the time, or at least half the time, we're not. We're more driven by emotions. Again, if you're approaching art from a very academic, realistic, hyper-realistic sort of approach, you're just focusing on the details and getting accurate illustrations of reality. Emotions and feelings don't really come into it that much. Whereas with this loose approach, sort of semi-abstract approach, you can try to express emotions, how you feel about the landscape. So again, that's interesting. And of course, you can be more spontaneous with this loose approach. Again, because you're, with the realist, hyper-realist approach, you're focusing just on those details and getting all of that correct. So you can't really be spontaneous. You can't just go off on a tangent with that sort of approach. Whereas again, with the loose approach, you can. The last thing I think about this loose approach that I think is an advantage over the more rigorous academic approach is that with the loose approach, you can explore the medium more. What does the medium allow you to do? Again, because there are no rules and you're not trying to reproduce a certain look. You're free to do whatever you want. So you can explore, in this case, oil paint, but watercolor, acrylic, soft pastels, whatever medium that you want to use, you can explore it and see what it's capable of doing. So those are the sort of things that are influencing me from Impressionism and Post-Impressionism. And these two painters, Vincent and Camille Pissarro, and some of the ideas that I'll, maybe incorporate into my own watercolor winter landscape, which I'll now show you me doing in this next part of the video. Okay, so in terms of the materials that I'm using, the paint is mostly by Sennelier. It's watercolor paint, and it's on 100% cotton cold-pressed watercolor paper. The paper is by the German company Hallmühle. As you can see, it's not a very big piece of paper. The brush, and I just use one brush for this painting, is a synthetic mop style brush. And you can see the sort of colors that I'm using on the left hand side. The first color I put down was sepia. And then I put some Prussian blue and a bit of neutral tint on top of that. The blues, Prussian blue, ultramarine blue, on top of sepia produce interesting effects, interesting colors, I think. And sort of colors that I want for this winter landscape. So, as I say, Vincent's painting that we saw at the beginning, he incorporated some warmer colors. In this painting, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick more with the cooler colors. It's just, to me, it just sort of suggests more cold, bleak, sort of winter landscape. Again, my approach, as I said, with the Camille Pissarro painting, it's not realism, it's not naturalism, well, it's certainly not photorealism or any of that sort of stuff. It is a loose approach to painting, a semi-abstract approach. So I'm trying to suggest the essence, the feeling of a winter landscape. I'm not trying to actually paint trees and skies and clouds and things like that. It's just trying to give this feeling of an open landscape, and it's cold, maybe a bit of snow on the ground. That's just the feeling that I'm going for. So this is the final painting. In the foreground, I added in a little bit of cadmium yellow. That's as close as I get to a warm color in this painting. But basically, it's a sort of limited palette. Let's say it's Prussian blue, that's the darkest blue. There's a bit of French ultramarine blue in there. There's the sepia and the cadmium yellow light. So keeping everything very simple, very abstract, And as I said with the Camille Pissarro painting, this loose approach, you're inviting the viewer to interpret things and use their own imagination a little bit, which I like because I think it's just more interesting, more fun to include the viewer in the painting experience to some extent. I know a lot of people don't like it, and that's one of the things that puts them off this approach to painting. They want everything just laid out in front of them, no interpretation. What you see is what you get. And that's fine. That's what they like. But I prefer this more interpretive approach to painting.